April 1940. In the shadow of World War II, deep within the forests of the Soviet Union, the secret police begin one of the most brutal operations of the war. Thousands of captured Polish officers, intellectuals, priests, and civil servants taken prisoner after the Soviet invasion of eastern Poland in September 1939 are summoned from their prison camps under the pretense of relocation. Blindfolded and bound, they are led into secluded woods near the towns of Katyn, Kalinin, and Kharkiv, where freshly dug pits await. These coordinated killings would later become collectively known as the Katyn Massacre. One by one, they are shot in the back of the head, their bodies stacked in layers and covered with soil. The forests fall silent, concealing the truth of this massacre for years. More than 22,000 Polish citizens will be murdered in this operation. However, this crime will not remain unpunished, and the main perpetrators will pay for their crimes with their own lives. On the 23rd of August 1939, Germany and the Soviet Union signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a treaty of non-aggression that secretly included a protocol dividing Eastern Europe into spheres of influence. This agreement sealed Poland's fate. Germany would take the West, and the Soviet Union would take the East. The Second World War started on the 1st of September 1939 when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. The attack unleashed a brutal campaign of destruction. Polish forces resisted bravely, but they were outnumbered and quickly pushed back. As the fighting raged in the West, a second blow came from the East. On the 17th of September 1939, the Red Army invaded Poland, claiming to protect the local population after the supposed collapse of the Polish state. In reality, Joseph Stalin was fulfilling his agreement with Adolf Hitler. Exhausted and surrounded, the Polish forces faced an impossible situation. The Polish commander-in-chief, Marshal Edward Rydz-Śmigły, ordered an evacuation toward Hungary and Romania. But confusion spread across the front. Some units surrendered, whilst others fought hopeless battles against overwhelming Soviet forces. By early October, Poland was defeated. Its western territories were taken by Germany, and the east fell under Soviet control. The Polish state ceased to exist, and its people now faced years of occupation, repression, and fear. After the Soviet invasion of Poland, thousands of Polish soldiers and civilians fell into enemy hands. Between 240 and 250,000 Poles were captured or arrested by the Red Army. Among them, around 10,000 officers of the Polish Army. Contrary to international conventions, these prisoners were handed over to the NKVD, the People's Commissariat for Internal Affairs, functioning as the Interior Ministry and secret police of the Soviet Union. They were officially classified as counter-revolutionary elements and treated as enemies of the Soviet state. 3 main camps were soon established for the captives. Officers, senior officials, and intellectuals were sent to Kozelsk and Starobelsk, while Ostashkov held members of the Border Protection Corps, the State Police, and other uniformed services. By the end of November 1939, more than 14,500 Polish prisoners of war were held in these camps. The conditions were harsh. Overcrowded barracks, shortages of food and water, and the constant threat of interrogation created an atmosphere of fear and hopelessness. Each prisoner was questioned about political views, family background, and foreign connections. Informers, secretly recruited by the NKVD, observed every movement and reported everything they heard. Despite months of propaganda and indoctrination, most Poles refused to cooperate. They remained loyal to their homeland and their faith. Only a few gave in under pressure. By late 1939, the NKVD began to accelerate its investigations. Prisoner files were reviewed and sent to a special council in Moscow that determined who would live and who would die. In March 1940, Lavrentiy Beria, head of the NKVD, sent a top-secret memorandum to Joseph Stalin. In it, he described the Polish prisoners as hardened and unrepentant enemies of Soviet authority and recommended their execution. Stalin approved immediately. The Politburo, the highest organ of the Central Committee in the Communist Party, confirmed the decision that same month, and the document was signed by Stalin, Vyacheslav Molotov, Kliment Voroshilov, Anastas Mikoyan, Mikhail Kalinin, and Lazar Kaganovich. The victims were not only professional soldiers. Many of the murdered were high-class specialists in various fields, among them university professors, engineers, priests, doctors, lawyers, state officials, local government officials, prosecutors, judges, political activists, landowners, poets, and writers, the intellectual elite of Poland. The Soviet authorities believed that eliminating these people would cripple Poland's ability to resist future Soviet control. The implementation of this decision was placed in the hands of an NKVD Troika, a three-man committee consisting of senior officers Vsevolod Merkulov, Bogdan Kabulov, and Leonid Bashtakov. Their task was to compile death lists, sign execution orders, and ensure that the process ran quickly, quietly, and in total secrecy. In early April 1940, the first execution orders reached the NKVD camps in Kozelsk, Starobelsk, and Ostashkov. Additional orders followed in mid-April for prisoners held in the cities of Minsk in Soviet Belarus and Kiev, Kharkiv, and Kherson in Soviet Ukraine. What the NKVD called unloading operations soon revealed their true purpose: the systematic extermination of Poland's captured elite. The executions were only carried out at night under strict secrecy. Prisoners were brought from their barracks to the basement of NKVD prisons, where soundproofed rooms awaited them. They were told they were being transferred or released. In reality, they were led one by one into a small chamber, briefly identified, handcuffed, and escorted into an adjoining execution room. There, in silence, they were shot in the back of the head. Major Dmitry Tokarev, the head of the NKVD in the city of Kalinin, today's Tver in Russia, later recalled, "After a few minutes, Blokhin put on his special clothing, a brown leather cap, a long leather apron, and gloves with cuffs above the elbows. It made a huge impression on me. I saw the executioner." The man he described was Vasily Blokhin, chief executioner of the NKVD and the person responsible for carrying out thousands of these murders. Blokhin's operation was ruthless in its precision. At the Ostashkov camp, he set an ambitious goal of 300 executions per night. He wore the same leather outfit Tokarev described and used a German-made Walter 7.65 pistol, chosen both for its reliability and to create confusion if the killings were ever discovered. Each victim was shot once at the base of the skull, then dragged away by the guards. The blood was hosed from the floor, and the next man was brought in. Roughly 30 NKVD officers, drivers, and guards worked alongside Blokhin, escorting prisoners, cleaning the execution rooms, and loading the bodies. The corpses were carried out through a rear door, placed in covered trucks, and transported to nearby burial sites. Near the village of Mednoye, close to Kalinin, trenches up to 10 meters long were dug each night to hold the remains. Excavators leveled the ground before dawn, erasing all trace of the killings. Blokhin worked without pause for nearly a month, executing an average of one man every 3 minutes. When the operation ended, around 22,000 Polish prisoners had been killed. In April 1940, he received the Order of the Red Banner for his so-called service. His total of 7,000 personal executions over 28 nights remains the deadliest record by a single individual in history. On the 22nd of June 1941, Nazi Germany, under the codename Operation Barbarossa, invaded the Soviet Union. In February 1943, the German secret field police began exhumations in the Katyn forest near the city of Smolensk in western Russia. 2 months later, the discovery was officially announced, sending shockwaves across the world. German authorities invited an international team of experts and journalists to witness the exhumations, hoping to exploit the discovery to divide the Allied powers. The graves contained thousands of Polish officers still wearing their uniforms, with documents dated from the spring of 1940. Under pressure, the Polish government in exile demanded an investigation by the International Red Cross. Moscow reacted with fury. The Soviet government broke off diplomatic relations with the Polish authorities in London and accused them of collaborating with Hitler. Stalin's propaganda machine immediately blamed the massacres on the Germans, claiming that the executions had taken place in 1941 after the German invasion. The Soviet newspaper Pravda published articles denouncing what they called the fascist lie, and this version of events would remain the official Soviet position for almost half a century. During the Nuremberg Trials after the war, the Soviet delegation once again attempted to attribute the crime to the Germans, but the evidence was inconclusive, and the case was quietly dropped. In the decades that followed, the Katyn Massacre remained one of the Soviet Union's most tightly guarded secrets. While most perpetrators of the Katyn Massacre escaped punishment, a few would eventually meet the same fate they had once dealt to others. Lavrentiy Beria, head of the NKVD who had proposed the killings, was arrested after Stalin's death, tried for treason, and executed in December 1953. Vsevolod Merkulov, a member of the NKVD Troika, and Bogdan Kabulov, another senior officer, were also executed that same year. Vasily Blokhin, the chief executioner who had personally shot thousands of prisoners, retired with honors and initially lived undisturbed. In November 1954, his rank of Major General was stripped from him during Nikita Khrushchev's de-Stalinization campaign, which declared him unworthy of holding such a title due to his role in the mass executions. Blokhin, already an alcoholic and mentally unstable, died in February 1955 at the age of 60. The official cause of death was listed as suicide. While a few high-ranking figures were executed, many others lived freely for decades, their names buried deep within Soviet archives. The majority of those who carried out the Katyn murders never stood trial. The truth, long buried beneath layers of lies and silence, would only emerge after generations of denial. Only decades later did fragments of the truth begin to surface. In 1990, the Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev officially admitted that the NKVD had carried out the executions on Stalin's orders, and 2 years later, Russian President Boris Yeltsin handed over key Politburo documents confirming Soviet responsibility. The Katyn Massacre, long denied, was finally acknowledged by the very nation that had concealed it for half a century. During the Second World War, around 6 million Polish citizens were murdered, including soldiers, Jews, civilians, and intellectuals who fell victim to both Nazi and Soviet terror. Yet despite this unimaginable loss, the spirit of Poland endured. The memory of Katyn stands as a solemn reminder that even amid darkness and lies, truth will always rise to light. Before we end today's story, take a look at worldhistory.tv, your special destination for true history lovers. Discover exclusive documentaries and incredible stories you won't find anywhere else. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.